happy to be here. Todd, thank you for joining us. Dr. Zaha, thank you for joining us. And of course, all the way from Sri Lanka, thank you for joining us. I just want to tell the audience before I introduce the panelists. Suresh asked me to do this, and he really is going to review me on this. So at the end of the session, whether it's good or bad, just give a rounding applause. You can stand up or whatever you want to do, so that at least Suresh will say, you know, Hafiz did a good job. Okay, seriously, my bonus relies on this. Okay. So now for Todd. I think some of you may have known Todd. Todd is the president and managing director of Ericsson for Malaysia, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. Todd has been here for 6 years, so practically Malaysian, not quite, but practically Malaysian. Probably knows some Malaysian cooking, etc. He's been 20 years in Ericsson, and I think he has contributed a lot, even to CSR from an Ericsson point of view in Malaysia, the mangrove in Selangor and Terengganu, right? Yeah, awesome. Actually, we've been there, fantastic. Then I'd like to introduce Dr. Zaha. In Malay, his title is the Pegawai Teknologi Kebangsaan, National Technology Officer. So he's like the highest ranked technology officer in the country for Microsoft. He's a 33-year-old professional of ICT. So ICT and also telco. He was with Telkom in the early days. So he's one of the pioneers of Telkom, probably, right? Rollout first GSM for Telkom?
The first GSM.
Yeah, first GSM for Telkom. So if you thought that the network is good, it came from him. If you thought that, it came from him as well. So, and he holds a PhD in computer science, right? No?
Yes, sir.
PhD in computer science.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And last but not least, our colleague from Dialog, Pradeep. Pradeep has been with Dialog for over the course of 19 years, right? Career in technology management. Pradeep has extensive experience in multiple generations of mobile telephony, leading to the most recent 4G, based on which the Dialog group have implemented mobile FD-LTE and fixed LTE network. So Pradeep is also a regular speaker in Sri Lanka as well as internationally. So we hope that. So there's a big round of introductions, and you cannot imagine the number of questions that I've prepared. I've actually prepared 23 questions. Yeah, I did. But I only shortlisted to 3. So in case we have plenty of time, we will do rapid fire questions and see whether who can do better. But Pradeep, I promise you, I'll let you win. So you're the customer for everyone. So we have to let you win. So first question, and I'll give this question to Todd, and I like Dr. Zaha as well as Pradeep to take the question as well. As you know, our title is the new operating paradigm, digital operations. So there's a lot that we can talk about digital operations. How do we achieve operational efficiency? And how do we gain the flexibility and agility? You know, when we go out there, when we sell to customers, sometimes we say when you do this, you're going to get the flexibility and agility. But sometimes they fall short. And sometimes, of course, it's easy to blame the vendor, but really there could be more to it than what we see, right? So maybe you can take that.
Yeah. Thanks, Hafiz. So anyone in the room have an Apple Watch? Oh, Rosanna has one. Okay, did you know there is more compute on your wrist than the entire amount of computing power it took to send one man to the moon?
Fantastic.
So, okay, why is that relevant to the question? So then that means the technology is starting to enable something much more powerful than the mobile networks that we built in the late 80s, right? So that, I mean, to give another example, the largest hotel chain in the world, at least by the number of bookings, Airbnb, their operation is run by 20 people. So obviously, if we start to use technology as a way to manage the networks, the way we can think about how to operate a network is so different. So we're definitely, I mean, in the old days, we would have built out the networks manually. We optimize the networks manually. We do the parameter setting ourselves. I mean, it's very people intensive. business. And I mean, we know we're managing networks with 1 billion subscribers, but the reality is we're moving towards a zero-touch network. And that means there's going to be major change in the new operating paradigm. And I think that's something that instead of being afraid of, we need to embrace. Because we can use that change, the new technologies coming, to help our people move into new areas.
Okay. Zero touch network, so that frightens me. Because my company, as you know, my company is a full touch company.
Yeah.
So what will happen to my people?
No.
Are you trying to get my people out of job?
No, sure, but I mean...
I just said that you did a good job for the country.
Now I'm in trouble already. No, but you know, the reality is the knowledge on telco is actually quite specialized. So while we're adopting a lot of open technologies for cloud, etc., I mean, to really understand how to make a good experience for all of us when we're visiting Kuala Lumpur, that requires specific expertise. And I mean, your team, I mean, these are a bunch of engineers. So engineers who understand telco is actually a very unique skill. So what we need, though, is to evolve from a lot of manual work to being used software programming and other tools to start trying to operate the networks differently and move on to other activities.
So there are more opportunities out there.
Of course.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, Doc, same question.
Okay. Thank you for the question. I think firstly we need to understand that what's really driving this digital transformation. That is, you talk about the watch being more powerful than the computer which brought man to the moon. But a lot of these technologies, it existed many years ago. AI started in the 1950s, for example, right? What is different is that's enabling companies like Grab to disrupt the transportation industry and Netflix disrupting the broadcasting industry. It's about the democratization of technology. And I think we talked about 5G today. If you think about it, the key thing here is democratizing connectivity. And what are these underlying technologies that are driving this transformation? If you think about it, it's mobile, social, data, cloud, and now Internet of Things, as well as artificial intelligence, enabled by the democratization of connectivity with this 5G. Now, if you look at most of these companies which came from nowhere to disrupt traditional industries, they're small companies. They were not like Microsoft, which actually, dominated the world. Yeah, from nowhere. So what is key in terms of succeeding in this new world is agility, right? It's agility and leveraging on democratized technology to power this agility to disrupt and come up with new business models. So if you think about your organization and how to survive in this new world, I think agility is very key, and that requires a major change in mindset. Now, there's two parts of this. You will have existing business that obviously you need to run in the most efficient manner to maximize profitability. But if you don't have moonshots, right, this startup thinking, which drives the next 10 S-curves, which you may actually be successful in one, I think you will actually be struggling to succeed in this new world. Now, what's required in your organization to do this? I think there are 4 pillars. The first is you need to be able to service this ever-changing customer. If you think about yourselves 10 years ago, right? I can't use a mobile phone here. Today is a new normal. I'm okay. I think you can use a mobile phone while on a stage. 10 years ago, you can't do that. So we have changed. The customers have changed. On the other hand, small things have got big impacts. That's what Google says, right? That means you do not need to be a big company to be successful, but you can leverage on the agility you have to be successful itself. So this enables you to then have 2 personas in your organization. One is the agility side of it, and the one is efficiency. Now, the second pillar is that you need to be agile in coming up with new products, right? That's the second pillar which a lot of companies are looking at. But to do this, you must enable your employees, right? In terms of driving the processes, the changes that's happening, enabling to make them decisions with data, and finally, you must have an infrastructure which is agile enough to be able to cater for these massive changes that can happen in a rapid manner. Thank you.
But, Doc, just a follow-up question on that. You remember we were talking before the session, and I was telling you, like, for me as a company that we go to do site preventive maintenance and fault maintenance, and sometimes, you know, the site goes down. Even in Klang Valley, I think you can ask most of the CTOs and CNOs, we have sites that we can't go in. You know, these sites, we have very limited access to the sites. We can only go in on, let's say, Monday morning. But the site went down on Friday night. You know, there's a 3-day of outage, and people don't care. And you talk about digital infrastructure, you talk about being agile. So what needs to be in place in order for us to move to the next step? Maybe a little bit of regulatory, maybe a little bit of something. There must be something that we need to do. I think if you ask TJ, he'll tell you that there's some sites we can't access, right, TJ? We can't go in. We can't go in.
Right.
You know, and people be you know, the contact center will be lighting up because people are calling, you know, but we can't go into the site. So what do we do?
I think so. I'd like to reflect on a very interesting comment made by Klaus Schwab, the founder and CEO of World Economic Forum. He says that in this new world, it's not about the big fish eating the small fish. It's about the fast fish eating the slow fish. So the key thing here is that, you know, his concern was that whilst it creates humongous opportunities for organizations out there, but those who do not want to change, these are the companies which actually become irrelevant, you know, in a very short period of time. For your information, the number of Fortune 500 companies that exist in 1950s that survived the transition with second and third industrial revolution, only 11% of companies that exist today. But here we're talking about, you know, changes happening so rapidly, disruptions happening so rapidly. If you look at the latest report on the companies which are really the most successful companies, you'll find that most of them are actually new companies that did not exist. So the key thing here is that for organizations which is existent, which have a business today, the key, and regulators and governments, the key thing is they need to have this mindset change so that they are able to be as agile as what's needed by the market and the customers.
You hold that thought on the mindset. We'll come back to that. So that I let Pradeep has flown in from Colombo, and now you've heard from Ericsson, you've heard from Microsoft, and from a mobile operator point of view. Pradeep, what do you think we need to do with the digital infrastructure? How do we get more efficient? You know, what's the opportunities for us?
Thanks, Hafiz. So, coming from a mobile operator's background, so I'll try to relate this, even your subsequent question to Dr. Mansor. I'll relate it from a mobile operator's point of view. So, traditional operators, whether it's a mobile operator or tobacco, we are used to doing what you call routine maintenance and reactive maintenance. So, routine is whether there's something or not. Every 3 months you go to the site, have a checklist, check what's right, what's wrong, and then, okay, you do it routinely, which is costing you. And then things go wrong, you go to the site and attend to it reactively. But what we didn't realize is the power of data that we already have. But what happened, the industrial 4.0 brought a revolution for us to, because we have been sitting on that data for years. From the day we started the network, the alarms are coming, we knew alarms were there, but we never harnessed that potential of the data. So today what we're trying to do is go for what you call predictive maintenance. So to ask your questions also, when you get predictive maintenance right, because everything in life or everything in nature, everything in this world is a pattern. It follows a pattern. So what this data scientist does is follow these patterns and identify these patterns and correlate these patterns, and then identify, okay, what is the linkage from one to the other. So when you do this predictive maintenance, you know a site can go out of service on Saturday night due to a failure in RRU or a power module or a microwave link or a fiber module. You know the rate. Then what you can do, you know very well site won't be accessible by the weekend. What you can do is you go there on Friday evening or daytime and sort it out. So then you don't face the problem that you're facing today. And so that's the power of predictive maintenance. So you act in advance, and it brings a lot of advantages, because today we do it routinely, whether they want it or not. Every 3 months you go and it will cost you hundreds of dollars a visit. But then at the end of the day, do you get a result? Only God knows. But when you do this, you call it just-in-time maintenance. Even can be once in a year. You don't have to do it, because you know this site will get impacted only once in a year. So you just do just-in-time maintenance, which will help you to drastically reduce the cost of maintenance. And I'll give you related to that, I'll give you a simple example. We run an operation with around 3,500 sites, and then the diesel generator we have for around, I must say, 25% of the sites. And 75% we run on battery backups, as well as what you call a portable generator. So what happens when there are long power cuts, we have outsourced contractors, and they go with the portable generator to the site, remove the electricity, the commercial power, plug in the portable generator, and then site is powered from this portable generator. But we have seen this bit of fraud happening. Even if the commercial grid is restored, we still see those guys run the generator just to claim extra hour of portable generator, which is also expensive. So the solution, immediately the engineers or the technical people, they always think of sensors or a hardware unit. So they come up with the unit and say, okay, plug this in, and the moment the power comes, you will get the alert, and okay, power is restored. But last week, this is very, very new, and last week I was having a chat with these teams, and they came up with a very innovative idea. Because Dialog, we are a quad play operator, so we run mobile, fixed, broadband, international TV, media, all the technologies we run. And then we have what you call a fixed LTE operation, where your customer uses a CPE, it's a desktop CPE, and then we have connectivity to that CPE through this TR09, and we can manage, and also we get all the alerts. So they came up with this idea: when the power is restored, or when power goes down, all those CPs, because we don't give battery, and people hardly use battery backups or UPS power, so when power goes down, the CP also goes down. So when power comes up, the CPs all come up. So you get the alert, and it's now the commercial power is restored. So you just link it to it and said, okay, exact time, the power is restored. So no additional gadgets, there's no additional hardware, you just make use of data that you have. That's one example. Second, so there are few things that we have to make use of. One is the power of data and artificial intelligence or machine learning. Second is power of crowdsourcing and image processing. So all of us who have been working for an operator, running operations, how difficult it is to maintain databases, right? Whether it's site databases, your antenna height, the equipment, what you have today, to maintain it either in AutoCAD or any other format, it's a very, very cumbersome job. And 95% of the time, the data is also not accurate. So what you can do is, you make use of power of crowdsourcing or image processing. All what you have to do is take some photos, feed it to a system, keep refining, capture the serial numbers, identify what is the equipment, take the photos, identify what are the heights, and then keep refining your database. So that's the power of user-generated content which you can use. So you don't have to do site visits, you don't have to pay expensive licenses to maintain databases. Just make use of it, and you can ask the people whether it's contractors, your staff, or even the general community who travels, to send as many photos as possible, but you can just filter out. If there's change in status, you change it, if not, just discard it. So that's one other area where you can use this Industrial 4.0 to reduce your operational cost and run a more cost-effective network.
So I like the one that you say, just-in-time maintenance. I really like that, especially for my outfit. It's better than Todd's zero-touch network, because that makes me nervous. No, just kidding. I think it's very important to be agile, as what Dr. Zahar was mentioning. Doc, are there any emerging use cases or business model that we can do in Malaysia for infra company? Like, what are the emerging business cases? We've heard about how Pradeep has saying that There were already existing data that if he wasn't careful, he would have bought sensors all over the place. But actually there was a much easier solution. So are there emerging business cases or models that we can use?
I think for the telco business, I think you are the enablers for the fourth industrial revolution, right? So if you think about, I mentioned just now, what's really technology that is driving all this, they are all internet enabled. If you don't believe, you just take a mobile, which is one of these disruptive technologies, right? And you turn off your Wi-Fi and turn off your 4G, what happens? It becomes a Nokia 3270, correct? All right? And I think the young ones don't even know what a Nokia 3270 is. So really, all these technologies, mobile, social, hyperscale cloud, which brings the cost of computing down by an order of magnitude, like AI and Internet of Things, this will not be possible without that pervasive connectivity. So if you think about it, if you think about use cases, essentially every use case in the fourth industrial revolution will rely on connectivity, right? Because this is the heart of which is enabling and empowering, the underlying democratized technology to power all these new business models and use cases. And you will start to see, for example, look at Microsoft, right? 10 years ago, we were competing against the IBMs of the world and Suns and Oracles, right? We wouldn't imagine that in today's world, we're not competing, they're still competitors, but our major competitors are retail companies and advertising companies, right? Amazons and Facebook and Googles, for example, right? And you will start to see that a lot of people or organizations and companies who are going to survive in this new world will have competitors that they don't even realize. They would, the new kinds of competitors or competitors which they don't, expect, right? So and you start to see a lot of companies consolidate. I know Axiata, for example, has got an arm which runs today financials, for example, right? You think about Grab. 4 months ago, Grab only had 4 services. Today they have 7 services. They are constantly innovating and creating new businesses, right? So I would say that from that point of view, any companies and all organizations will actually be a use case in the fourth industrial revolution where telecommunications is a use case. Now, one thing I want to say finally is this. Because of that connectivity too, while it brings huge amounts of benefit, we have to think about making sure cybersecurity becomes a business issue. In the past, it is an IT issue. But in today's world, without that connectivity, if you get disrupted, it means that your whole business actually will fail. Collapse. And that is why, for example, in financials, Bank Negara recently, they introduced a new guideline called the risk management for IT. They say that the first thing is that the responsibility of ensuring cyber resilience is the board. It's not the IT department, right?
That's why we coined up in telco best effort.
Best effort. No, this is real effort, right? That means once the board is responsible, you ask for budgets, you ask for organizational changes, it has to happen, right? So it turns it around. Cybersecurity is now becoming a business enabler, an enabler for the fourth industrial revolution.
So Todd, maybe your thoughts on it, emerging use cases and business model that drives the adoption.
Yeah. So I'll have to fulfill a promise because I told Guyan when I was up on stage that I would say whatever he said was wrong. So he said
but that's quite normal.
Yes. If you remember the number,
sorry, Guyan.
But if you remember the number, and actually he's right. He was talking cost of production per gigabit for a mobile operator, which is our customers who are in the value chain, has to go from 125 to 25 cents. Actually, I think it has to be 10% of the current cost, so 12.5 cents to make it happen. How to do that? So one thing, I think it's very straightforward. Things like remote or site acceptance, drive test. I mean, let's say for a company like yours, you shouldn't be selling it, and for the mobile operators, they shouldn't be buying it because the technologies, if we use software, there's tools for this stuff. You definitely can do site acceptance remotely. Using pictures and whatever else. If you can crowdsource a song, Why can't you crowdsource the customer experience at a site? So why do you need to do drive testing, right? So I mean, the adoption of tools I think is very important, and this is a way, if you look at the cost map that Guyan showed, I mean, there's a, let's say, I don't say this because we sell the network infrastructure, but I mean, 12% is the cost is on the equipment, 30% is on the tower leasing, and I mean, taking care of that tower costs money. So I think tools is very, very important. The other very obvious big business case goes back to the topic earlier around sharing. So why is it when I walk around Mount Kiara, there are more poles than expats in all of Mount Kiara? I mean, there's poles all over the show, right? How can it be? So if I take the mobile infrastructure, why can't we share? And I'll tell you why, and I'm gonna maybe lose some business in Sri Lanka because Pradeep's my only customer. But you cannot ask a CTO to say, hey, can you please make a common grid with 2 or 3 mobile operators, but at the same time, you have the same retainability per cell that you have today. So yes, Pradeep, to do that, then the sharing will be 1%. So the mindset will have to change massively to say, I need to reduce my production cost per gigabit. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to allow Pradeep to redesign the network. I'm going to share the network to reduce my cost. Then I can do some use tools to redesign and make a new experience. I think those are very obvious examples, not even going into edge computing and et cetera, that you can do from a TowerCo perspective that would make a difference for our value chain if we would just adopt the software and change the mindset a little bit.
So Pradeep, on that note, what do you think are the cultural and mindset changes that needs to happen? What's stopping us from doing it? I mean, you know, you go to these events, you go to the seminars, you go to many sessions, you even read books about it, you read articles about it. People say, well, you got to change the mindset. You know, it's almost like a flick of a switch. But, you know, actually, when, like you and me, we do operations, it's not a flick of a switch. It's not. So what do we need to do to achieve that?
Yeah. So I think I'll take it from 2 or 3 different angles. First, I think when we run a network or a TowerCo or whatever it is, we always think it should be owned by us and be managed by us. But I think Guyan was explaining in his presentation the Gen Z, and he call it it's an OPEX generation. It's not a CAPEX generation. But today, even if you look at the CEFOs, they would love CAPEX, not OPEX. So the mentality is around.
And I have to go to Colombo on Friday to discuss that. So that's a big problem. Yeah.
So the new business model is all about partnerships and crowdsourcing.
Yes.
So even for EDOTCO, a tower company, I'll give a simple example. So a few years ago, your objective was to acquire land, build a greenfield tower, acquire a rooftop, build a rooftop tower. But then over time, it got changed, okay, going to bring furniture. And now you have to go one step forward and say, okay, acquire right of way to lay fiber, acquire in building to do active DASs and all that. So even in this process, I think even TowerCo should work from a mentality of doing it on their own. Because all this infrastructure, whether we like it or not, get invested. What we should look at is more of a partnership. Let's say, how do you redefine a lamp pole? How do you redefine a signboard? How do you redefine a sewer line? How do you redefine a stormwater line? So where it will be beneficial to all the people or all the stakeholders in that ecosystem. And from operator's point of view, also they should look at, okay, how do we share, bring synergy through sharing. And there are some other business models. For example, take one of the biggest pain points that operators are afraid today of 5G is nothing but power. Everybody is talking of electricity. How am I going to face this problem? But I don't know how many of you know 1 hour of solar energy that fall on Earth is more than enough to power the whole world for 1 year. It's like 430 quintillion joules, which is enough to power. If you harness it, if you harness that full energy, you can power the whole world for 1 year. So that's the power of solar. And also if you look at the models, the TowerCos are used to charging it on unit basis, flat at the end of the month, 400 units, your per unit rate is this much, okay, this is your bill. But there again, if you look at from the Industrial 4.0, how do you harness the power of data and give that benefit to the operators or the end user. So simple example I'll give you. Where today the battery technology has evolved with lithium ion, which can run for around 3,000, 4,000 cycles. And solar has evolved. So I'm working with one company who take all these sources and feed it to an AI assistant like Watson. And then say you have electricity, the commercial grid, you have the battery backup, which is, let's say, lithium ion, because effectiveness is more, you have the controllers, you have more cycles, charge discharge cycles, and you have solar. So you feed this information, and then we all know what you call least cost routing. And this can follow a theory of least cost generation. So when solar is running, you run on solar, and then you charge the batteries. And then rather than running grid or even the diesel generator, you run on battery. So then there are unknowns. Let's say your battery is draining. You don't know whether it's going to shine or rain next day. So all what you have to do is now incorporate your telemetry data or climate information. And you know for sure within 1 hour sun will shine. Then you charge your batteries and then give that benefit. Then you take what you call a least cost energy. So if you do it, solar, the per unit cost of solar is the minimum today. Because your lifetime is so many years, you get the fuel free of charge because it's a solar. And then if you really use it, I think the cost of energy won't be an issue anymore. So end to end, even on the other side, end user side, and adjacent, how do you change the business model, even end user? Say that our company can look at other options also because they'll have a lot of data. And even every base station or every point can be a weather station or a surveillance where you can capture all the data and then monetize it some other way. So it's multiple opportunities. It's a matter of how we look at it and how we see the opportunity to harness those business models to give the benefit to all the stakeholders in that chain.
Okay, so we have another 3 minutes. So a quick question, one final question. If you were EDOTCO or if you were Suresh, what do you think the one single thing that you would ask EDOTCO to do in digital operations?
Use the power of data and get the right people. Because the example I was saying, even I have few data scientists under me. I think EDOTCO, I don't know whether they have done it, have to change the mindset from an infra core to an intelligent core. And harness the power of data, which is more powerful than what we think. I'll give another simple example. We have data scientists, and they're the one who come up with all these nice ideas. And then recently, so those guys have been working for 5 or 6 years. So recently, we've got some interns who are very new, just still in the university, and gave them the challenge. And you won't understand the way they look at it and the solutions they came up with is much more powerful than where we were thinking the existing data scientists are powerful. So it's always you have to do this. So I call this fish tank theory. All of us know fish tank, and all of us have been looking at fish tank. It's one of the most interesting sites. But if you realize it's a more of a routine or boring, the fish goes round and round, pick something which it thinks is food, and it's a very boring or routine. How do you change? The moment you put a new fish, everybody starts running after that fish. The whole behavior changes. So it's the same thing that you have to do, because you have to keep on reinventing, getting the new blood, infusing the new blood where you think it keeps on changing over and over.
So Todd, one final thing. If you were EDOTCO,
No, actually,
what
I think
would you ask them to do?
No, but if I look at what EDOTCO is doing, I think it's got the initiatives in all the right areas. I think maybe, what the customer is saying, which I think is right, is how do we adopt the tools faster so we get into a smarter environment of not just customer experience planning, but customer experience and business planning for where we put the sites and how we get the sites to the right overall TCO over time. I think that's an area we have to continue to work so that we make sure the industry is healthy.
So, Doc, you have 20 seconds.
Yes, basically I said leverage on the hyperscale cloud, because that brings down the cost, it leverages on economies of scale, and it gives you the flexibility and agility, the kind of tools that you need for data as well as AI. Thank you.
All right. So thank you so much. We are about 24 seconds left to the session. I want to say thank you to Pradeep, thank you to Dr. Zah, thank you to Todd I think I got from Pradeep that he wants EDOTCO to move from an infra co to an intelligent infra co and leverage more on the data scientists. Todd definitely wants us to go towards a zero-touch network. I'm not sure I agree with that for now. But I have to agree. You can't stop technology. It's just going to be there. Either you accept it, you adopt it, or you become obsolete. And last but not least, from Dr. Zaha is that we really need to be agile. We need to adopt the technologies that's out there. Otherwise, we'll be left behind. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for hearing. Thank you so much.